Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Smile. And today, back joining me in the studio for part two of our conversation is Miss Gabby
Well,
Williamson.
hello there.
Hello again. Hello again. Now, if you did not listen to part one, I urge you to stop right now, go back and listen to that conversation first, because it will help to make a lot more sense for the second part of this conversation that we're going to dive straight into now. So, Gabs, I want to kick it off with understanding about this period of your life, which you call your first round of recovery. How did you get there and what did that look like?
Yeah, so first round of recovery. Firstly, I didn't know what recovery was. The first round of recovery for me was I was about 30 and I'd had 10 years of blowing up my life, but still everything looking all right on the outside.
Can relate.
And, everyone, people asking me if everything was good. I'm like, yeah, it's good. Like, just been overseas, or I've just got this new job, or meet my new partner, or whatever. Yeah, it was around my early 30s where my mum got really ill. And my dad and I used to sit around and drink wine and talk. And by then, I blew up friendships, I blew up relationships, and I
Because of your drinking?
because of my drinking and like foot and mouth and just being an awful person. That's the truth. I was an awful person. And I remember sitting with Dad one night and going, I can't drink with him. And it wasn't that I couldn't drink with him. It was just I can't drink anymore. And but I didn't know what to do. And I sent a text out to a whole heap of friends and I said, I think I've got a drinking problem and I need some help. And they all came back to me with, that's all right. Like, we'll make sure that we only order one bottle of wine. And, like, what about you try, like, just having a 6-pack of ciders? Now, I'd done all of this. I'd tested everything when it came to alcohol. Like, what I was like, I'd say white wine is the devil's juice. Like, white wine is the devil. I won't drink white wine anymore. I won't drink wine. I'll only buy a 4-pack.
I'll have a glass of water in between.
Yeah, no more shots. I've got outgrown shots. I'm too old for shots, all those sorts of things. And yeah, I reached out and like, God bless them. That's all they knew. Like, they
Totally.
didn't understand. And like, I didn't know anyone that had ever been in recovery or not drank. I didn't know anyone that didn't drink.
Had you heard of like AA at that time through the
So,
movies?
well, it's funny. Like, I hear a lot of people say I saw AA in the movies. I don't. I don't think I'd ever heard of AA or seen it like that. I probably had, but I didn't take any notice. I had a therapist once. I went to her and said, and it was probably around this time, I'd said to her, I think I have a drinking problem. And she was like, no, it's just the phase you're going through in life. You're leaning on alcohol to get you through a bad time. Or it wasn't those words, but it was along that line. And I was adamant. I said to her, I'm really worried about this. And she printed out a list of AA meetings for me. And I just never went. Like, I opened the door, but I just was like, this is too extreme. And my perception of AA was literally old white men in a circle talking about their war stories.
Mm.
Like literally war stories. That's how I pictured it. And then just the drinking, they're all homeless or they'd all been homeless or whatever that was. I just had what I thought was such a clear idea of what AA was, and that was not me.
And I'm also imagining at that age and stage of your life, you probably weren't thinking that you were an alcoholic. Like you were like, yeah, I'm drinking problematically, but I'm certainly not an alcoholic because
100%.
I haven't lost everything.
100%. Like, you learn so much. I've learned so much about what an alcoholic is and that disease of the mind. But no way. Like, an alcoholic to me was someone that I really pictured it as this like 60-year-old white man that had just like lost everything, was abusive,
Angry, yeah.
angry.
Big red nose.
Yeah, drinking in the park, which I did anyway too. The things that
Yeah.
your brain tells you to forget. But I just had this picture, and it was like, that is an alcoholic to me. And it did not cross my mind that I was an alcoholic. Not 1 second of it.
So you decided that you needed to get sober, but you did it
Yeah.
what, alone?
So I did that reach out, and I was there's a couple of things in this story. So before I stopped, so I didn't stop then. I was like, stopping wasn't even on the radar. I know I always thought I was in control because I do like the dry Julys or Feb fast or whatever, and I could do it, even though I was planning the whole time of when I was going to get out of it. And again, the ego would always get me because I'd sign up with people and they'd all bust. They'd all be like, I've got to go to an event, da, da, da. And I'd be like, I'm better than you. In my head, I was like, I'm better than you. I can do this. You are so much worse than me.
Yeah.
And they were such a constant around the denial of my drinking and using because I always had someone around me that was worse than me, in inverted commas. Like, so I had this pinnacle of like, that person's worse than me. I'm not that bad.
So tell me about you. Like you got to a point where you did stop.
Yeah. So I did that. Sorry. Yeah. I sent the messages out. And then I was at a work conference and I was still drinking at this time and it was really bad. Like I had to do an amends at year 2 to someone that was on that conference. I got really, really drunk. I made a fool out of the business I was working for and myself. And I got up the next day and I was like, I can't, I don't want to be here anymore. Like I need to die. Like it was awful. And it was just the shame, the guilt and shame of the night before. And I knew bits and pieces would happen. I had stuff in my phone, but I was like, I have to get out of here. So I left the conference early and I was driving home and I was like, I was looking at the polls and I'm like, okay. And anyway, so I ended up getting home and went to the GP and I went into the GP and I said, I'm scared. And from there, he sort of said, he gave me a pamphlet to First Step, which is a drug and alcohol facility, not for profit in St Kilda, but they also put me on suicide watch because I was like, I'm going to drive my car into a pole. And that was when it was all just that was such a blur that time. But I ended up going into First Steps a few days later. And that's when I had someone take me in, this beautiful woman. And that's when she said to me at the end of the assessment, you don't want to die, you just don't want to live in this space anymore. And that started a journey of sobriety where so the beautiful thing about that place is they're a holistic facility. So they had a GP there, a psychiatrist, psychologist, counsellors, and they were able to, I remember feeling really awful because I had means, like I had money to pay for these services. I didn't know how to or where to find these services. I'd been placed in the universe had put me in this place and they were able to help me and it was free. And I often do say to people, like, there are free services out there. You need to look for them. And I just shout out to First Step because that place they ultimately saved my life because moving forward from that, they got me into the rehab I went into, which was a 12-step rehab, which is why I'm here today and why I'm alive today and why I'm happy today. But they put me on meds. They went through the psychotherapy, or not even psychotherapy, just therapy with me. And all this time, like, so I put down the drink and I was like, I'm a shit drunk. I'm a shit drunk. If I get rid of the alcohol, life will be perfect. Nothing else in my life changed over that period. I didn't have a drink for 3.5 years. And that I genuinely believed that alcohol was the problem of my life. And for some reason, I couldn't control it. And I tried and it needed to go away. And one thing about talk therapy as well is, like, I did talk therapy for 20 odd years. Talk therapy is all about, well, my experience of what I was like just bitching about my life and what was going on and poor me. And I'd have the therapist saying like, okay, it's this. And like I was diagnosed at one stage with BPD because I had suicidal ideation and attempts. And, you know, then there's the clinical depression diagnosis and the clinical anxiety and severe anxiety and all those diagnoses I was getting, yet I was still drinking at the same time.
Yeah.
And the talk therapy for me, it just exacerbated that my life was fucked. And that didn't necessarily happen in that time frame, but it also, nothing changed in my outer life other than me putting down that drink. So I became what I call like a dry drunk, where you remove the alcohol, but nothing else changes.
Mm.
And I was still working in the same job. I still had the same people I was hanging out with. And 6 months into it, and I don't really remember, I think I was probably still taking benzos and sleepers, not abusing them, but I was still definitely taking them to sleep and stuff like that. But I hadn't, the real addiction again and the obsession again hadn't kicked in. At 6 months, I remember having this beautiful experience in the city where I saw the leaves on the trees for the first time, and I felt the breeze. And I remember ringing mum, and I have bipolar in my family as well on my dad's side. And I was freaking out. I thought I was like, okay, I'm happy, because, I've always been chasing a diagnosis. I come from a medical family. Diagnosis is super important. And, because then you get medicated for whatever your ailment is. And I thought I was having a manic episode because I was like in life. And I remember ringing mum saying, oh my God. And she's like, why don't you go down and get to your doctor? And it was like, no, actually, you're just feeling you're in life for the first time. And I was like,
you're
wow.
not numbing out.
Not numbing out. And it wasn't until I hit about 11 months where I was still like, because really being a dry drunk, I was thinking about alcohol still every day, and the fact that I couldn't drink it. It was about I couldn't drink it.
Yeah.
And how shit that was.
It's such an important differentiation, isn't it, for people listening? Because I think some people assume, I certainly did, that if I was going to get sober, I was still going to be consumed by the thought of drinking until the day I died, and that I would never be able to walk into a pub or a party without really noticing alcohol everywhere. And I just thought, we call it white-knuckling it. I just thought I was going to have to hold on for dear life. And like, it's actually not the case at all. If you replace the alcohol with a program, with other tools, whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't have to be that way. But this dry drunk experience that you're talking about
horrendous.
Is like, because you've taken away the solution, but you haven't replaced it with anything.
Yeah.
And so you end up being like 10 times worse.
Yes, it's horrendous. And my anxiety and depression was really, really rampant.
Because it's like you
really
don't have,
rampant.
like the valve or the numbing agent.
Yeah.
And so you feel everything.
Yeah, it was awful. And the other thing is too, I was still hanging out with the same people. So drinking drugs was still a huge part of my life. And the FOMO was really real. And that it was just that real self-pity of like, I'm fucked. Like, I need to be fixed. That was one thing I really had to beat out of myself in this recovery. And why can't I just be like everyone else? And still that desire to fit in, because I hadn't learned who, and I still am learning who I am, but I didn't know who I was. And I still trying to fit this square peg into a round hole. And that was, I still wanted validation from these people, and I still wanted to fit in. And so that is then your self-worth down the toilet, because that's not happening. And then you don't have the substance to put you at ease or like make you feel like you're connecting, which is just a load of bullshit, because you're not connecting when you're on a substance. Like, it just, you might feel like, oh, you have the best D&Ms, it's just so full of shit. And I didn't realize that until I started having those D&Ms or those
in sobriety,
where it's like, this is the magic, and you feel that radiate, over a few days, and that relationship builds and that
connection
stuff.
And authenticity.
It's so false, and it's just, and then it's gone, and then the next day that person's basically a stranger to you again, or they were a stranger in the first place, and they're just still a stranger.
Good old bathroom chats.
Yeah, so the good old bathroom chats.
So when did you start? Were you taking drugs the entire time in this 3.5 years of sobriety, or did they sort of
ramped up
back in? Okay, so tell me about
ramped
that.
Up. So the whole thing about trying to fit in, the first time I took party drugs again in that sobriety was at about 11 months, and I was going to a Prodigy gig, and I was so excited. And I remember thinking and talking out loud to the friends I was going with too, I'm like, I'm going to get some gear. I want you guys to protect me from picking up a drink. I do not want to pick up a drink. And they're like, yeah, of course. And again, they don't know. They can use like that, whatever. And it was the best night. I had the best night. I didn't pick up a drink. And I remember thinking, I was on MDMA, so the world was beautiful. Everything was fabulous. And I remember thinking, this is the solution.
I figured it
I've
out.
figured it out. I don't have to drink because I'm a shit drunk and I make stupid choices and I'm out of control. But on the drugs, I'm okay. I'm good. And, again, rose-colored glasses of like what that next week looked like. I can't even remember, but I can guarantee it was awful depression, anxiety,
The come down.
hatred, the come down of it. Ugh. But I'd found the solution. So that kicked off like weekends again of like, I can still go out with my friends. I just get on the gear. Like, it's fine. And then they can drink and it's fine. And like, I was supplying and I wanted everyone to be at my level and all that stuff. And, threw it around and I blew a lot of money. And I deeply regret that. But that's just how it was. And I had the money to throw around. I will get to like step work, but like my amends, like I still owe my parents a lot of money and I was earning a lot of money there, but they supported me for it throughout my life, and I want to make that right. And anyway, that's a separate thing. But I
When did it
started
start
really,
creeping into your daily
so
life?
I really started, it really ramped up in COVID,
Mm.
really ramped up in COVID. And I remember everyone saying to me, God, you're so good. You haven't been drinking in COVID. You haven't been drinking in COVID. And I was in a pretty intense job and the world shut down. And, like you lived through it as well. Like Melbourne, we were, we had that point of 23 hours a day locked in, 1 hour out. And like I still feel like I have a lot of behaviors that are still from that COVID time of being not necessarily isolating, but being really safe in home. Like I feel really safe at home and that can be to my detriment sometimes. But it started when I felt the pressure ramp up at work and I felt like I had to always be on. And my party drugs went from, just sort of wasn't even pills then because pills was very much a 90s, 2000 thing, but the Coke was really prevalent. I loved Coke, but Coke also just gave me that 10-minute high and then I was down again and I couldn't get enough of it. And again, didn't understand the need for want and it's never ending. You can never hit that unless it was an OD for me. Like I couldn't hit that stop because I just had to keep going more, 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 more. And then I got back on the amphetamines and that really helped me work. And I was like, this is great. I'm so productive. Like I'm so good. I'm creative. I can sit up at night. I can get on these meetings, all the things. And then, I ended up being introduced to a drug that I said I would never touch in my life. And that's when it really, really escalated in the daily use. And
Was that ice or meth or what do we call it these days?
yeah, I have never said this publicly. My parents don't know this. But yeah, it was meth, amphetamine. Yeah. And
Which is
that's really
actually
scary.
yeah.
It's really, really scary.
And it's so much more common than people realize. Like
It's really common. It's
in
really,
professional settings.
really, really common.
Because again, we think of the stigma, the person scratching their face
Yeah.
with the, but it's actually
Yeah.
not. It's like people in professional settings who are high performing who need to be able to be on.
Yeah. There's a lot of mums too. Like I've met a lot of mums that are ex-methamphetamine addicts. And that's because they felt pressure to do everything as mother. Yeah. But no one would have known. No one knew.
Yeah.
And the erratic behaviour is like my workplace, I was so erratic. Like again, I remember being pulled in and like my boss saying to me, we don't know whether you're up or down. And that was just that drug. And yeah, when I was introduced to that as good Coke. Here's some good Coke.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, what is this? But I knew after the first or second go, I was like, I know what this is. We never talked about it. We never said that. I never ordered it like that. I knew exactly what it was. I just said the good Coke. I knew exactly what it was.
The denial.
And it wasn't even in that. Yeah, I mean, it's
So this
it's really hard to talk about that. I'm glad I shared it because there's such a stigma around that drug. To anyone that knows me that doesn't know this part of my story, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm out the other side. But I can probably imagine this is a few people in my life that might be hearing this are like, what the fuck?
So I'm assuming that this is the train that you rode to your rock bottom.
Yeah.
So take
Yeah.
us there.
So, you'd think I'd know I had a problem when there was one night. I do share this story with laughs, but I don't know if I've told you this, Ash, but there was one night I was so desperate and I just got a new kitten, my beautiful, as you introduced that, my little Alfred, who's my ride or die. Yeah, so my beautiful ride or die Alfred, when I first got him, he had crystal litter.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being so desperate one afternoon. I think I had to be on a meeting or something. I was so desperate and I saw a crystal in my hallway. And I was like, oh my God, like magic jackpot. And it was cat litter. I snorted up cat litter. You'd think that I would have been like, whoa. But I wasn't. I was just like, I don't think that's done anything for me. I don't think that's done anything. And yeah, that was a roll, like
A low point.
that was a low point. But also that roller coaster of that. Like I was in so much denial. I needed that to function, and I thought this is a wonder drug. This is fabulous. And again, I was in so much denial of control because if I needed to sleep, I'd be like, I know what to take to sleep. I know what to do, and if this is happening, I knew all. Like I thought, like I am the director of my whole life. I know exactly how to manage this, but I was erratic. I was doing crazy, crazy things in and out of the workplace. Like I was doing crazy things in COVID, like just all the really bad behaviors. But people just thought, God, you're not having a drink. You're doing so well. You're holding down a job. God, you're doing so well in COVID. It must be so hard. And I was just in this world of my own. But again, the depression, like that drug, especially too with anxiety, the anxiety more so was the killer. But after I came out of that 3.5 years, and the other thing I should say is like I was celebrating all this. So I've since archived all the posts, but I was like 1,000 days sober, and I'd be like booze free because I was like I knew I had a big party for my 1,000 days booze free with plates of fucking cocaine, like just crazy stuff and like.
But again, if people don't know the language, if they're not in recovery, like I know people in my life as well that might not be drinking, but they're still taking drugs. And I'm like, with all due respect, you're not sober.
Yeah, yeah.
To be sober is to be substance free.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in you should be doing this or you're not doing it the right way. It's not about that. It's about what you actually, I don't want people to trick themselves or cheat themselves from the experience of real sobriety.
Yeah. So true.
Because real sobriety is the best and most magical gift you could ever give yourself.
Yeah.
But don't trick yourself or cheat yourself by thinking that if you're still abusing prescription meds, if you're still taking drugs, cocaine, whatever it is, you're not sober.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you're not having the beautiful sober experience.
Yeah.
I think that's
and
the
I
thing.
think there is a difference between people who are on medications that are prescribed for their mental health. I'm not an anti-medication person. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And like I've lived that. I have lived that. And I hated sobriety. Yeah. What I thought was sobriety. Yeah. I hated it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hated it. But then I thought I found the solution. Then that became so at 3.5 years, a friend of mine passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And we were still in COVID. His funeral was on Zoom. And I remember and this is the crazy ego, right, as well. Like I watched this funeral and I had a meeting backed onto it straight after. And I was high through the funeral to get through the funeral and I ran out and I couldn't get any more gear. And I had to go to this meeting, dial in on this Teams meeting. And luckily it was with a couple of colleagues. And I was crying and crying, like all the signs like drugs didn't do anything for me anymore. Like I was bawling my eyes out and they said, get off, go and have a break. And I got off and I was like, I need something. And I was like, I haven't had a drink for 3.5 years. I was like, I'll just go and get a bottle of champagne.
Because the bottle shops were still open.
Bottle shops were, I'll just go and get a bottle of champagne. Like I'll be fine. I just need something right now. Like, I'm devastated. The world is fucked. All this stuff, and I went and I bought a bottle of Verve. I remember it so clearly, and I'd always said if I ever drink again, it's going to be French champagne. Top
the
nice stuff. And I brought it home, and I got the glass out and I was crying. I just knew it wasn't the right thing for me to do, but I did it anyway. And I got drunk that night. I drank the whole bottle. I passed out. And I got up the next day, and this is again the head. I was like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Oh, I feel awful. I was so hungover. Oh, that's why I don't drink. And I remember telling everyone, oh, look, I had a bit of a blip, but oh my God, it was horrendous. Don't worry about it. And then a few weeks later, I had the girls around. It was Cup. So it was around this time of year. And I said, and I had all the gear out, and I was like, oh, I was talking to them about it. And all the alcohol was in the house. And I said to one of my friends, can you just make sure the alcohol goes when you guys go? And I knew. And she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then they all left and my fridge was full of booze. And I was like, ugh. And I just drank. I drank like I'd never drank before. And that spiraled me into 3 months of absolute hell. Absolute hell. And I remember it was over Christmas and my parents didn't know I'd picked up a drink again. I told them that I'd picked up a drink again at Christmas and I was so ashamed, but they didn't know anything about the drugs. They didn't know that I was drinking around the clock, which I'd never done before in my life. Like I was drinking every day. I picked up and went further than I'd ever been before. And
After that
that was,
3.5 years
yeah,
off.
and that was so painful being at Christmas and not being able to drink. Because I remember my dad pouring out the wines, and I said, "Oh, you can pour me one." He said, "Absolutely not." And I remember just being like, "Oh." So fast forward, I got to the February, and I'd had enough, and I wrote the letter to my family. Again, there's lots of stuff they put. I wrote a letter to my family, and I said, and I've still got it. I found it about 1.5 years ago. I said, "I can't fix myself. There's nothing you could have done to help me. I'm so sorry. I love you." You know, it was a full goodbye letter. And I took everything I had in the house. Yeah. I took everything I had in the house and then I went into a little bit of psychosis. My heart was racing. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I panicked and I rang someone that I used to use with and he was like, "You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just walk around the house." Just goes, and I was like, and I was panicking too because I was like, "What have I done? What have I done?" You know, and but I was also too scared to say that, to ask for help. It was more like I just need to talk to someone. You know, I didn't tell them what I'd done, and then I rang a girlfriend and she was with her kids and she's like, "Can you just get to sleep?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Like, of course I couldn't. Like I was fucked. Anyway, I was walking around the balcony. I thought the plants were talking to me. Like I was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" I was so scared, and I was like, "What is happening to me?" And anyway, I don't really remember much after that, and then lying in the bed going, "This is it. Like this is it. This is happening." And it was almost like this wave of acceptance that I was going to die. And I was like, it's literally like, everything's in order. I've written the letter. They know it's not their fault. It's got nothing to do with anyone else. And I went to sleep. I somehow went to sleep and I woke up the next day and I was like, I was so upset that I'd woken up. Even though I'd gone to sleep in so much fear, there was like this wave of acceptance and I woke up and I was like, fuck, I'm still here. And that's when I wrote an email to my first step counselor and I said, I think I need rehab. I think I need proper help. And she said, call me. And she said, I think you need to go to Malvern Private. I said, okay. And I was defeated. And then within 24 hours, I was like, I'm not going to Malvern Private. I can't have my phone. I don't have internet. I'm not going to be able to work. Who do you think you are? Fuck off.
Isn't it insane?
And I went and looked up a whole heap of other rehabs and I was still drinking and using at this time. And absolutely, like, I think this is like I'd taken sick leave at about now. Like, I was just like, I can't. It was just 24 hour around the clock. And I looked up every rehab, every private rehab. I was like, I wanted masseuse, I wanted spa. You know, there was one point where I was like, I need a rehab that takes animals so I could take Alfie with me because there was no way I was leaving
Were you trying
Alfie.
to find one that would chopper you in?
Yeah, so This is how grandiose I was. Like this is what this stuff did to me. I rang Harp, who I've done amends to. I wrote a men's email to. Like literally, I thought I was like the most special billionaire person demanding that they get the chopper to pick me up and take me in. Like this is how cooked I was.
Insane.
And I was like, I knew I didn't have the money. I knew that I was not that person, but I wanted them to treat me like a celebrity. Like it was so crazy. But anyway, lo and behold, I ended up in Melbourne. Yeah.
And that's really what changed everything,
And the
right?
other funny thing about that is too, I don't remember doing my assessment with Melbourne Private, but I remember they wanted to book me in. They wanted to get me in on like the 12th of March or something, and my belly button, what we call belly button birthday, but proper birthday, like birthday, is the 15th of March. And I was like, oh no,
Oh, that won't work.
that won't work. And I booked in for the 17th of March, 2022. And then I went, I told my sister I was going into rehab, which was funny at that time because we didn't really have a relationship. But I told her and I went home and my parents thought I was going home to celebrate my 39th birthday with them. And I sat down at the countertop with them and I said, I'm going into rehab. And they were like, what? What? What happened? How is it this bad? What are you talking about? I was like, I just need some help.
So tell me what happened in the time you were there. Specifically, I want to know, what did you learn about yourself? Because you said how like you didn't understand recovery the first time around. What changed? What information did you receive that helped you to understand what was actually really going on and therefore what solution was available?
I walked into that rehab and I went into a full panic because I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I don't need to be here. What changed me in that time? Firstly, it was I met people that were like me or like just that were having problems with drugs and alcohol. It was a whole new world that opened up for me, that people that understood what I was saying when I didn't even have to say anything. It was like, always laugh about how I always say, because everyone in my world knows what I'm talking about. I don't have to say anything. I'd be like, da-da-da. Yeah, I know. I totally get it. So that was a huge thing for me. The other thing was I had a huge light bulb moment around the drugs in rehab. So I went in because I'd picked up the alcohol again. And I, at that time, I could call myself an alcoholic, not that I connected to that. And the story of me having my first time I ever said I was an alcoholic, I was actually high at a party with a girl I'd never met who was telling me a deep story about her dad and how he died. And then she turned around, she said to me, why don't you drink? And it was like this, the gods opening up. And I was just like, I'm an alcoholic. I just burst into tears. So when I went in there, I was like, I'm an alcoholic. And like, to me, it was just like alcohol. I don't even know. I don't know what the connection was, but I was okay to say the word. And it wasn't until I was about 2 weeks in that I had a counsellor pressing me about my drug use. And I was like, we don't need to talk about that. Like, that's fine. Because again, I'd still really separated. The problem was alcohol. Like, I now know alcohol was my solution. Substance is my solution to trying to live a life. But I had this conversation. I was challenged in a group therapy, and I was like, whatever. And then I was put on a bus to an NA, Narcotics Anonymous meeting that night, Tuesday night. It was Turek Tuesday. Great meeting for anyone that's looking for a 12-step meeting in the NA fellowship. And I went in there and I heard my story. And I'd been to a few AAs during the 2 weeks, and all I'd heard in AA was what we called in rehab, which is neg raving, which is negatively raving about the past life. That's all I heard. They weren't doing that. Yeah,
good old days. Yeah.
They weren't doing that, but that's what I heard. And so I had a real distaste for AA. Now, if I hadn't have been in that rehab, I would never have gone back to AA. Now, AA has truly saved my life. So the moral of that story is just keep coming back and keep going. You don't leave till the miracle happens. But at that NA, I had my first real, it's not just what I'm taking or what I'm putting in. It's the fact that I need something to live my life.
I fundamentally feel different from people around me.
I need something to keep me going, whether it's it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, whether it's downers, uppers, food, sex, love. It doesn't matter if it's anything, scrolling. It's just something to fill that void,
The
to
hole
fill
in the
that
soul.
100%. And I got given my little white key tag, which they have in that fellowship, which is your first meeting. And I remember feeling so special. That is something that I think is so important. And that was so important for me. I got the blue tack, I put it up on my bed, and I felt like I had a community.
Yeah.
And that was life-changing.
Yeah.
That was life-changing.
And so you came out of rehab and you actually relapsed.
I relapsed after 2 weeks because I tried to be a prime student in rehab. I wanted to be team leader. I didn't want to do anything wrong. I fell in love in rehab with a beautiful looking man that was there for a CCO order, which is a corrections. So basically, instead of going to jail, they go to rehab, which is not to put him down, but like when we talk about
might have been a bit broken.
When we talk about your ideal up here, it's not really my ideal. Someone, especially someone in rehab, dealing with the same things as me. But I thought I'd found love. So I was a prize student in rehab. I did everything that they told me to do. I got a sponsor. I was doing meetings, and I walked out of there going, I know what to do now. I've got all the tools. I've got everything. I'm fine. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing the stuff, because I was. I came out. I was doing the meetings. I met up with my sponsor, do all that. But I still had in my mind that I've got this. And what happened for me is I got really, really connected and trauma bonded to the people I was in rehab with. One of my girlfriends that I was in rehab with, who I do not know where she is to this day, she relapsed. And I was on the phone to her and I couldn't save her. And I hit the fuck it button. And I had one night, and I feel so blessed that it was one night. And I don't know if you mind me sharing this, but I had just picked Ash up. Ash is no longer my sponsor anymore. We're friends. We've sort of gone up from that. But at that time, I think I'd asked Ash 2 days before. I'd left my first sponsor, and I'd asked Ash 2 days before, and I didn't pick up the phone and call her. And I had a friend calling me to go to a meeting, and I just hit the fucker button, and I sculled down. But the next day, they say stick with the strength, and even if that's someone that's 5 days or whatever, as long as they're doing the drill. And I text two mates and I said, hi, my name's Gab, I'm an addict, I'm day one again. And one of them texted me and said, have you called your sponsor? And that then started, get to a meeting and head between my legs, and I haven't picked up a drink or drug since that day, 3.5 years ago. Yeah. It was a real, and talk about rock bottoms, right? Like my rock bottom, I feel like I am of no delusion that there's still more to come if I went back out there. I think I love the saying, there's a trap door, you open it and you keep going. For me, again, the reason around me not wanting to be anymore was like, when is this going to end? The only way this is going to end is if I die. You know, the rock bottom is such a fallacy. It looks so different for everyone. For me, that rock bottom was just that deep, intense, like, oh, I cannot do this anymore. And what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
What have I got to lose? Just try it.
I love that. Like,
Yeah.
if you're somebody that relates to this, if you're in a position where you're feeling hopeless at the moment, just, you know, I often hear people say, give it a year, give it 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, give it 2
My 1 to 2 years was awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, give it 2 years. And like, if you want your old life back, then you're welcome
Go and
to
have
it.
it.
You're
Yeah.
welcome to it, you know,
100%.
but like to truly give this a proper go with no other substances in your system, like true recovery, ideally working a program that may or may not be for you, but I know for both of us, it's like what we absolutely credit as being the number one reason that we're both still sober.
Yep.
Like, don't cheat yourself out of what could be the most magical life.
And you can't even fathom it. You can't picture it. Like they talk about in the rooms, life beyond your wildest dreams. And that, like, I can't put into words, because I, again, saw that as such a material thing. I never, ever thought I could live a life without drinking drugs and be happy. I never, ever thought I'd have freedom from my head telling me I'm a shit person, telling me, like, obsessing over when I can drink or when I can use, or like all that stuff. I didn't even cross my mind that could be a possibility.
Just like, isn't it? Like, I can't, like, the only word I can use is serenity. It's that peace and contentment. And it's, in a way, I get frustrated at myself when I say, like, you know, I describe the best thing I have in my life today is peace and contentment, because it's not sexy enough to
No,
really
it's
explain
really not.
the feeling
It's
of
really
what
not.
is inside my heart now and the peace that I have in
Yeah.
my body. And I wish there was a better way to describe it, because I wish everyone could feel this feeling. But there really is. I haven't figured out another way
Do you
to
know a
describe
good
it
way
yet.
to put it? And this is
Yeah.
perfect, right? So it's been Cup week and it's racing season at the moment. And this, especially with Cup, this would have been a big weekend for me. And I woke up on Sunday morning and I did my morning routine. I went set up and there was people across the road that were still bendering from the night before. The music was going. They were sitting out on the balcony. They were singing. They were dancing or whatever. And I just had so much relaxation in my body. My brain was calm. I knew I hadn't done anything crazy. I knew that, and I had like I'd picked a day off. So I was like, I don't need to be doing anything. I don't need to be rushing anywhere. I don't need to be wondering what I've done. So that real relaxing feeling in your body and your brain, which is that calm and peace, but no FOMO whatsoever, nothing whatsoever, and no judgment or anything like that. I was just like, oh, glad. I had a little chuckle. I was watching this girl dance. I'm like, that would have been me. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so nice. I'm just sitting here drinking my decaf, patting my cat. Like, life is bloody good.
Life is beautiful.
Yeah.
But, you touched on just then that year 1 to 2 was quite tricky for you, and same for me actually. Can we talk about that? Because you actually went back to rehab, as you mentioned in part 1. You went to South Pacific Private in your second year of recovery. Why? Because at that stage you weren't really at risk of picking up a drink, but you
Wasn't about the drink or the drugs.
mental health stuff, right?
Yeah.
Can you share?
Yeah. So I was told early on in my sobriety, because of the drugs that I had taken, that it would take a little while for me to learn my own emotional regulation, what was mental health, because I'd had all these diagnoses as well. So I was still set that like these things were still wrong with me. I still think now I have real trust in the psychiatrist that I have, because he has drugs and alcohol background. But I was told that around the 18-month mark, you're going to really sort of have this turning point around, is it mental health or is it just early recovery? Because early recovery is an up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like we say it's a roller coaster. It's quicker than that. You're literally up, down, up, down. But the ups get you through. The ups get you through. And at about 16 months, I started to have this uniqueness again, that I was failing at recovery because I didn't feel 100% all the time. I was like, I'm not fixed. Again, that awful terminology of like, why aren't I fixed yet? I'd left my job. I was working in a cafe. I'd turned 40. I didn't have a partner.
Life wasn't
what I thought it was going to be after a year. I thought after a year that everything would just be like this flourishing big 1 year and then you're done and off you go. And that was certainly not the case. And that's a big wake up call when you have built up that fantasy in your head. And at 16 months, I was getting really depressed and I really struggled to talk about it. And I went back into that, like, people are going to run away from me because I'm going through this stuff, and I'm scared to talk to people about it. I started having suicidal thoughts again. I never wanted to pick up a drink or drug. And the crazy thing about that is when I started to have suicidal thoughts again, I remember sitting in my car forcing myself to go, why don't you just go and get on the gear then? Because then you'll be happy. I was forcing that thought into my head. And it was just like, it just kept going back out. It's like, that's not going to fix it. That's not going to fix it. But yet the whole thing around's like, yeah, but if you just die, that'll fix it. But I knew it wasn't about wanting to die. I knew enough. I'd had that said to me. That was a big light bulb. It's not about wanting to die. It's about not wanting to be where you are right now. And it took me to get to a meeting to break down and share my mental health is really bad at the moment and I don't know what to do. And I had 2 women come up to me after that meeting, and one of them said to me, at your sobriety, I was suicidal. And I said to her, that's how I've been feeling. Oh my God. And it's just that, again, that problem shared is a problem halved, and like, you are never the only one going through something. And it's not like, for me, the perfectionism and the failure stuff is so big. I did not want to look like I was failing. I did not want to look like I was failing. And that then spurred me on to talk to my therapist, which was then, I think it's time you go back in and do some more work.
And is that when you were diagnosed with CPT?
That was at South Pacific I was. So I went into South Pacific praying that they would take me off my antidepressants. I really wanted to be medication free. And I would still love that. But I also, have I accepted that I may never be? I don't know. Probably not. I'm probably not at that acceptance point yet. But I do understand and accept that just for now, I'm still medicated. But I went into SPP. Food was a huge binging, was a huge thing that had just come, what I thought had come out of nowhere. It hadn't really. It was there my whole life, but that had come really crazily into that. And I wasn't sleeping, and my depression was really bad.
Because that's what happens sometimes, you know, when we're addicted to something and we remove the substance. Yes, we've got program, we've got tools, but our brain seeks to find other ways to act out. And so food's the same for me.
Yeah.
Food, relationships, work is a big one for me.
And that's where I learn about codependency. I mean, work for me, like that's I wouldn't say work got me into using amphetamine, methamphetamine, but it's hand in hand. Like the addiction to work was that. But I did my first 3 steps in SPP on codependency, which is like, it's a whole nother, I know you've done a lot of really good episodes on that stuff, but to me, codependency, I just thought it was like you have a partner and you're codependent on that partner.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea the depth of what codependency is. And I remember one of the things when I did my admission into SPP was I said to them, like, if everyone else around me is okay, I'm okay. Now that is the core bloody checkbox for codependency. As long as everyone else around me is okay, as long as everything else is around me is okay, I'm okay. I just thought that was normal. But that's codependency, codepending on people's emotions, behaviors, places, things, all that stuff. And so I'm really, really proud that I went into SPP with time up. I think it was beautiful to go in without having to worry about the drink or drug, and actually heal a little bit more and do a bit more work. I had a totally different experience in that rehab to when I went into Melbourne, like with different considerations, all that sort of stuff, different times in my life. I'm looking forward to going back to South Pacific again to do more work. They have different programs that they do once you've been in for that 3-week admission. Look, I came out of there and I was really tired. And that's the other thing, like for me, tiredness, and I say this all the time, that's been a real factor for me, the tiredness. My body's still recovering at 3.5 years. I'm still learning where my thresholds are and things like that. But I was super tired. But that really, really helped me. And again, it's just about asking for help. And I needed that help, and I needed medical support. And my diagnosis out of that was, CPTSD and PTSD for something specific that had happened when I was 11. And that then took me on a journey around, and they didn't take me off my meds, and I was devastated about that. And I ended up 3 months after I came out of SPP, I had another catch up with my psych and my psychiatrist, and he said to me, I'm going to change your med. And I burst into tears. And I was like, he's like, what's going on? And I said, I just really want to be drug free. And he said, that just may never be your case. And he said, talk me through it. He said, is it because in the rooms, of course it says, you can, unless prescribed by a doctor, and you know that. And I said, I think it has got to do with that as well, like the failing, like I want to be, but I said more so like I feel like I've never known myself without anything that has helped me in my chemical makeup in my brain. And that's work now I'm doing with myself. And what has come from that is a real trying to learn, and sometimes too much. I've pulled back a little bit on, because CPTSD is not in the DSM-4, so it's not commonly diagnosed. What is commonly diagnosed is ADHD because it's the same symptoms and everything presents the same. The reason that my psychiatrist could diagnose me with CPTSD, and that was his, and I've spoken to him since about that. I challenged him on it. He's like, that is what I believe. And I do believe that now. And that is because of the time he spent with me and how deep we went with my history, and especially my history in active addiction, that there is no doubt in his brain that that is my diagnosis. And the difference between CPTSD and ADHD, this is my understanding, not as a medical professional, is that CPTSD is your brain has learnt all of these different responses from being in survival mode. And you can unlearn that, and you can change that. You can rewire those neural pathways. Whereas with ADHD, you can't do that. So I have learnt a lot about that because I really did debate him on that. I didn't trust that. And I think I mentioned in the last one, or it might have just been off mic to you, but like, yeah, people pointed at me and said, "You've got ADHD. You're typical ADHD," and I believed that, and so I wanted to get that diagnosis, and I then went through therapy of like accepting that if I had to go on medication, that I would be safe if I had to go on like a dexamphetamine or something like that. So I went through that journey, and then I got the referral to get the diagnosis and get the meds, and then I sort of stopped, and I had that beautiful pause, and I was like, why don't I listen to my psychiatrist and have a look? Like I'd had a break from therapy as well, and I think that's really important because I needed to learn to live my life and for things to come up naturally that I would have to use my tools to work through.
Well, like what's just come to me is like it's like in that moment of pause, you stopped trying to fix yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you're not actually
And
broken.
I've got all the answers. I know me best.
Mm.
And that's what I went into. I know me best.
Mm.
And I think it's so common, whether you're in recovery or not. It's like, I'm the one that knows me best.
Yeah.
And
but when you're coming from a fundamentally
true,
flawed place of I'm not enough,
yeah,
then it's that constant trying to fix. And yet right now, like,
yeah. And I know me best in certain ways, but I also know me best in the way that I need experts in their field to guide me on things that I don't know. And I have to put my hand up and say, I don't know. That's been a huge learning for me in recovery.
Humbling.
Because was never my case. My ego was too high to ever say, I don't know, and help me. Never.
So, Gab, I want to know, like, you've been on such a journey and you're in such a good place right now. What are you doing today to maintain your recovery? I know that you're back in the workforce and that was a big scary thing to step into. Where do you find the balance these days?
Yeah, it's a huge one. So as I mentioned, I've gone back. I actually have found a new psychologist who is not in the room. So I had therapists that were part of program, not that I knew them in program, but had 12-step behind them. And that was really great for me in my first couple of years because they understood the language I was talking. Coming back into psychology this time, I really looked for someone that had a deep understanding of trauma and women's health because these were the things that I was like, well, I think it's hormone. I've found an amazing psychologist and we're doing some havening work and EMDR as part of that process, which has been phenomenal. That neuro and this was the one thing I wanted to do before I went down the meds path with ADHD. So that was really important for me to try and learn some tools, and that's really helping me at the moment. So again, in the future, if ADHD diagnosis and meds is in my future, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not averse to that. But again, that's that acceptance and that beauty of like feeling like I'm in flow. And for me now, so in the last 6 months, I've gone back into my profession, which is marketing. And I'm absolutely loving the client I'm working with at the moment. I work 3 days a week. I've also started a little potty that you have.
Yes, you have.
You
give it a plug.
Inspired me. It's called Belly Laughs Brutal Honesty. And look, this year's been a bit of a test and learn. I've been doing some mini episodes. I'm not going to lie, I haven't done one for a month, but I have recommitted to myself that, and I will record a potty episode in the next up and coming week or so. But next year, I really want to take the time because I found a lot of joy in that, and that was stemmed from me doing voice journals in my first year of recovery. I found it really difficult to write, and I knew how helpful journaling was to get that noise out of your head. And I started voice journaling, which was just putting on my recorder. And then about a year ago, I ended up having a conversation with someone and I said, I think I've voice journaled about this. Let me find it. And we played it and it was the funniest thing. It was the funniest thing. And I thought this could maybe help people feel less alone because I know I'm not the only 40-something-year-old that's tackling this whole nostalgia of living without technology, dating, recovery, all those things. And yeah, so Belly Laughs and Brutal Honesty, you can find me on Insta. Look, I'm practicing. I'm learning. It's all a growth learning little thing, but it's been beautiful. So next year I really, I'm doing a lot of work around self-abandonment and this thing's one of it. Like I really love doing it. And then I got the fear in me because I was like, I don't have anything relevant to say. I'm boring. I'm sick of my own voice. And I find so much joy in doing that recording that, I don't want to self-abandon. So I'm doing that. As I said, I love that I can be present with my family. I get to go and see mum and dad and, my nieces and nephews, and I do all that stuff. And program is a huge part of my life, and I really struggled again. Like part of even before I went to SPP was I was doing a meeting a day. Sometimes on the weekends I was doing 3 to 4 meetings a Saturday and a Sunday. And it was because I didn't feel safe in my home, safe in my head. It wasn't really anything. It was safe in my head. And even learning to bring life back in full but having the backbone of a 12-step program has been a journey for me. But I've had safe people around me to support me. And I know that I'm going to be okay no matter what. And I think the biggest part of that, is that I have really been able to learn to say, I don't know, and I don't have all the answers, and can you help me on this one? That's just been huge, and that's all about faith. And I've gone through a whole journey around being able to even saying the word God. Like that used to make me cringe. I hated it. It knocked me out. That was one of the reasons too when I relapsed that first time, was because like you can take your God stuff and throw it in the bin, like get out of my life. But spirituality and faith to me is so different, and I am continually on that journey. And my life today is just so peaceful. There's not the chaos. Like when people come into my life with drama, I'm all about energy. If people have bad, like I walk away. I have boundaries now. I learn, and I like myself. I wouldn't say I love myself, but I like myself. I don't wake up every day wanting to die. I wake up and I go, okay, what's on for today? Like I get this second chance at life. And when things get really down and out, or I'm having a shitty day, like I do always remember that like I have another 40 years left, cross fingers, like I get to have hope. I get to have hope for the future, and I get to like one day at a time, one step at a time, just experience life on a completely different level. Like it's just phenomenal.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, Gab, I'm so grateful that this journey has brought us together, that you've been here to share with us today. You know what's coming next?
Yes.
What are your 3 non-negotiables that allow you to live your life today happy, authentic, and free?
Again, I've thought about this a lot, and I really struggled. My first one is gratitude.
Yeah.
100%. Like I know you laughed about me smashing out my gratitudes, but that has been life-changing for me. Life-changing. So gratitudes, like what started with the basic gratitude practice of sending them every day, is now finding the gratitude throughout the day is really important. Like it's not just a one and done. And that's the whole thing about changing perspective of, we talked about the like drinking at your wedding or whatever. It's like the perspective of the gratitude is like, I get to live this and be present, so that is my number one. My number 2 is, and this is very privileged for me to say this, but my number 2 is having a day a week to myself, where I still might take phone calls and things like that, but I try and avoid being around lots of people or being really stimulated. I just have that day. It could be like reading, it could be watching a bit of Netflix, could be going for a walk, could be getting some jobs done, but I wake up on that day without a plan, and that's really not without a plan necessarily, but without a to-do list. So if there's things I want to get done, I will do, but there's no to-do list. I think that's super important.
Love that.
And the third one for me is I need to have safe people in my life and love in my life, and that has taught me how to also be a safe person to others and to be able to love others. And that is a real non-negotiable for me, because it comes down to that connection. And really, it's everywhere, but that connection is the opposite to addiction. And that love and safety for me in relationships and connection is a non-negotiable. If I go out, like I talk about, my second one being I have to have time for myself, but that's not about isolation. That's about self-care and self-love and regenerating and resetting and decompressing so that I can have that, fuller experience of that love with others. So the connection to me is, and connecting with the right people that fill my heart and soul is a non-negotiable for me.
Amen to that. Oh, my darling. I love you.
I love you too.
I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so, so much for being here. We say here on Behind the Smile that when we recover loudly, no one needs suffer in silence. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here for this very special 2-part episode.
I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry, guys.
I think everyone's going to be very happy. Bye, darling.